In 1936, Camarillo State Hospital admitted its first residents. By the mid-1950s, the population had risen to over 7,000, making it the largest state hospital in California. The facility was fully licensed and accredited. By the mid-1960s, the population of mentally disabled had begun to drop, and the first developmentally disabled were admitted here. Shortly after that, the name of the facility was changed to Camarillo State Hospital and Developmental Center, but the folks that worked here just called it CAM. In the video that follows, you're going to get a chance to meet some of the folks that work here and hear about the contributions of this facility.
Camarillo State Hospital and Developmental Center has served thousands of persons with developmental disabilities and mental disorders since 1936. Generations of dedicated employees work together to provide round-the-clock life services for persons with mental illness, mental retardation, autism, cerebral palsy, and other developmental disorders. Research and techniques developed at Camarillo are now used throughout the country. Through the hard work and innovation of these employees, the lives of residents at Camarillo were positively affected.
I think, that the closure here, the imminent closure of our facility here, this gorgeous Camarillo State Hospital, must be viewed within the context of the mental health movement and state hospitals here in the United States. And from its inception with our founding fathers, it seems like governmental agencies have either ignored completely or passed off to others the care of the severely mentally ill. In the early days of the Republic, if sheriffs didn't run them out of town or a lynching mob didn't, seriously mentally ill people were placed in jail, or they were placed in almshouses, or corn cribs, or silos, if not in jail, or prison. And so they were not very well treated.
In 1929, the state legislature appropriated $1 million for the establishment of a new mental hospital in Southern California to relieve overcrowding in the other state hospitals. By this time, more than 14,000 persons were living in these hospitals.
In time, these facilities, these state hospitals, became overcrowded, and they became understaffed and underfunded, and the conditions became terrible. And they were either ignored, overlooked, or sometimes even forgotten. And with indeterminate sentencing, or commitments really, the mentally ill were packed in together, and these mental hospitals became custodial warehouses. And this was a situation, for almost a century.
In 1931, the legislature appropriated an additional $455,600 for the construction and equipping of a patient's unit. In 1932, the present site of 1,648 acres, located 4.5 miles south of Camarillo, was purchased for approximately $425,000. The hospital was built under WPA auspices, and due to a lack of a sufficient local labor force, people came from all around the country to build the hospital. Construction was started on the first portion of the male custodial unit, which was ready for occupancy in the summer of 1936. Initially, the facility housed patients only in what is now known as the South Complex, with the Bell Tower building serving as the original administration building. In a dedication ceremony which featured state and local dignitaries, the facility was opened in 1936. The first 410 patients arriving on chartered trains from other hospitals were admitted to the facility on November 1st, 1936. At the time, Camarillo was governed by the State Department of Institutions, an oversight entity created in 1921 over all institutions for persons with developmental, behavioral, and mental disorders. Camarillo joined the existing Agnew State Hospital in Santa Clara, Napa State Hospital, Norwalk State Hospital, Mendocino State Hospital, Patton State Hospital, and the Stockton State Hospital, all of which were designated as hospitals for the insane. Camarillo State Hospital continued to receive legislative appropriations for expansion, and construction of the North Complex was initiated in 1939. When completed, the North Complex was designated as the female side, and the South Complex the male side. Soon after, the receiving and treatment building and the present administration building were completed. Camarillo experienced one of the most phenomenal increases in patient population of any institution in California's history. From a mere 410 patients in 1936, its population grew to 1,082 in 1937. By 1954, the population peaked at 7,266 patients.
I came here in 1957, and I started as a psychiatric technician. And I worked on different, at that time we call them wards. And I worked on Unit 13, that was my first unit that I went on, the first ward. And I worked there for a couple of years on Unit 13. And we had about 130 patients on that one unit.
Well, I came here in August of 1959. I was a month out of the Air Force, and I was looking for a temporary job. I wanted to go work for General Motors in Van Nuys with the rest of my friends. We were making pretty good money in those days, and the state hospital was paying $255 a month. It was a giant institution in those days, about 6,500. There was over 100 clients on each unit, and now it's rare when you get more than 36. There was just everything was going. The dairy was in operation. We had a bakery. We had a butcher shop. We had a shoemaker. Just a small village, and just everybody had their job.
During the years of expansion, acreage was added to facilitate an extensive farm and dairy operation, worked primarily by patients.
There was a ranch here, and our patients, and there were at zenith of 7,200 patients at one time here at Camarillo State Hospital. And it was the largest facility west of Charity Hospital in New Orleans. And the patients themselves tilled the fields. They ate what they grew. They milked the cows, slaughtered cattle, and so on. And they actually worked for often in the grounds for the houses of the doctors who worked here. It was a very large, hurly-burly, busy setting in those days.
We had a farm and also a dairy where the cows were milked and the milk was brought here for the clients. And they also had an employees' dining room.
The facility produced fruits, vegetables, and grains, and grew alfalfa for 560 Holstein cows in the dairy. At its peak, farm acreage consisted of 304 acres of alfalfa, 227 acres of vegetables, 178 acres of grain crops, and 80 acres of orchards.
When I went through training back in 1960, we learned how to work with all the patients and take care of their needs and nursing procedures and that sort of thing. We also learned how to mop floors, wash windows, strip and wax floors. We were kind of, if you will, chief cook and bottle washers, jack of all trades.
I started here in roughly 1963. At that time, I was a psychiatric technician. I've seen a number of changes. When I started to work here, there were someplace right around 6,000 consumers, clients, patients, whatever the word was at the time that they were using. And like I said, it was a segregated facility, male and female. In fact, the segregation went so far that what we now call a 1 key had 2 versions. There was an M key and an F key. And you could not enter the other side of the facility if you didn't have the right key.
Came to work here in August of 1966 as a psych tech trainee. Went to work, showed up on a Sunday night and started working Monday morning. Had no clue as to what I was going to be doing. Wanted to get out of the Central Valley heat and dust for a few months. I was planning on working here for a few months. So almost 31 years later, here I am. There's a lot of people out here who really came to work here for just a short time and stayed 30 years, 40 years.
Back then, we were under divisions. The medical surgical division, the male division, the female division, geriatric division. We didn't have janitors back then, so we did the medications, the medical aspect, the therapy, the placement, plus we cleaned the units. Huge buffers. I almost took out one entire day hall the first time I used it. I didn't realize how strong that little puppy was. It swung me all over.
By 1967, the number of persons with mental disabilities in the state hospital had significantly declined. The superintendent was authorized to admit the first individuals with developmental disabilities in order to relieve overcrowding which existed in the other state facilities where they had been treated. From that point on, it was known as Camarillo State Hospital and Developmental Center. The progression toward community services and living, as opposed to institutional placement, had begun in California and nationwide.
There were some massive changes going on at the time. The facility, which previously had been set up in a somewhat segregated manner, what they had was the South Complex, as we now know it, was the male side of the facility. The North Complex was the female side of the facility. Then there was the receiving and treatment area, which was totally a medical surgical function, and children's unit, which obviously housed the children with mental problems.
We were asked to establish a new program for people that were labeled then DD offenders. They were adolescents, young adults who had some problems with law, and they were sent to Camarillo. So we put together a treatment program. And about a year into the program, there's a group from Washington that came out here from the President's Committee on Mental Retardation, did an evaluation and said that that was the best program of its type that they'd seen in the country, which was very gratifying. Models that we initiated here ended up being utilized in other states.
The reduction in the number of persons with mental disabilities at the facility came about for various reasons. In the mid-1950s, the development of antipsychotic medication permitted the initiation of community-based services.
The approach to the use of medications is totally different today than it was then. In those days, there's really a lot of trial and error. Titration of medications was not the fine science it is today.
Some of the most pioneer work on psychopharmacology was conducted at this facility right here. This imminently going to close. Phil May, a wonderful British psychiatrist who's now deceased, did the very first work on researches, double-blind studies on the utility of chlorpromazine and stelazine in the treatment of mental illness. And it's a pioneer work that's known all over the world. I do recall that the initial excitement about Thorazine and so on kind of gave way to an interest in electroconvulsive therapy, first introduced by an Italian psychiatrist. And they used to call it Edison medicine, the patients.
There were several medications that were used here, began to be used here more about the time I came, that were relatively new to the whole medical scene. So it was kind of fun to be in on the growing edge, watch the literature develop, watch our use enhance patients' lives.
In the 1960s, welfare benefits were first made available to persons who were disabled as a result of a mental disorder, and federal funds were made available to establish local psychiatric treatment facilities and board and care facilities in the community. In 1967, 482 developmentally disabled persons were selected for transfer from other developmental centers. Many were transferred over a 6-month period from Lanterman Developmental Center in Pomona and Fairview Developmental Center in Costa Mesa.
Up to that point, we'd had nothing but the mentally disabled here. So a lot of staff here really didn't know what to expect. The staff that went down to Lanterman really had an opportunity to see the types of programming they did. But it was an interesting time because we, again, as I said, we're just creating programs from scratch.
When I first started here, there were no fire alarm systems, there were no sprinkler systems in any of the buildings. Now, virtually every building that houses or treats has those systems in them. We had, at the time, as I recall, 2 fire engines in the entire facility. Now there are 4 fire engines, complete ambulance services, just a lot of other functions, full rescue services.
In 1969, the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act was signed into law. It eliminated the previous indefinite commitments of persons who were found by a court to be mentally disabled. The new laws required automatic judicial review of every decision to hospitalize a person involuntarily beyond a very limited period, usually any period longer than 72 hours. These laws also required annual court reviews for individuals who were found to have a grave disability and may receive services over a year in duration. In 1971, treatment programs were created for residents including youth services, psychiatric intervention, psychiatric rehabilitation, geropsychiatric, medical surgical, physical, social, and behavior adjustment, and an autism program. During the 1970s, as part of the center's individualized therapy, staff worked to make hospitalization as brief as possible. Also gone were the dormitory-style housing, where 30 to 40 persons slept in each room. Great care was taken to provide residents with a normal life setting, including religious services. Camarillo had 5 religious denominations represented on campus. A volunteer program, including foster grandparents, brought the community closer to the residents. A wide variety of specially designed educational services and programs were also available.
I like helping people. I really like helping people, and these people, most of them, even though they don't say it, they show it in a lot of ways that they appreciate the help that they're getting.
Dr. Rieger, who is the director of the Children's Treatment Program, was very innovative. He developed the program here. He made sure that it was separated from the rest of the facility. He pretty much hand-picked the staff. If you worked in his program, you had to pass Dr. Rieger's muster. Some very brilliant doctors and psychologists developing treatment programs for these kids that Camarillo was kind of the end of the line. They'd been in a number of treatment facilities and not been successful prior to coming here. And Dr. Rieger used to say that the one thing that we can give these kids that will make the biggest change in their lives is to be firm, fair, and consistent with them.
Working with the children and seeing them progress and initially get maybe a home visit with parents and then actually get discharged and maintain their life outside of the facility gives you a lot of feelings of I'm not sure how you would describe the feelings, but you feel good about what you did.
In addition to treatment programs, there was a research component under joint sponsorship with the University of California at Los Angeles. Staff training programs included a residency program in general psychiatry, nursing and psychiatric technician training, and internships in psychiatry and recreation, occupation and music therapies. Special occasions and holidays provided opportunities for residents, staff, and often the community to enjoy activities together. The campus setting with 2 swimming pools, auditorium, gymnasium, bowling alley, and open space was often used for social events. It was also not unusual to see a Hollywood movie crew to request an occasional filming on the scenic Camarillo grounds.
As much as the medicine, as much as the therapy sessions, it was the physical environment that helped them pull their lives back together.
The country atmosphere and the calming, there's a lot of spaces for all of the clients to be out. And we hold at least 2 festivals a year, one 4th of July, one around Cinco de Mayo, that the clients are out and there's booths where they can play games and they have food and everything. And just before closing, we also had fireworks for all the clients and special treats. And the children had a big barbecue, all of the children and adolescents up at CU. And the adult had Mexican food catered and pizzas down in the mall.
A variety of creative arts programs were provided for residents, including music, dance, art, and art therapy, as well as an extensive vocational program.
For 8 years, I've been a voc resource specialist. And that title means I find work for our consumers to do in-house here on the facility. WTC stands for Work Training Center, and we do subcontract work for the industry outside. To give you an example, is the 3M company, which is no longer really known as 3M here, it's Imation. We do a job for them which requires our consumers to clean these hubs of tape, recording tape, and they are paid a salary for that. We in turn are paid by the company, which pays our consumers their salaries, and we do other types of packaging and assembly jobs. When our consumers do leave, they are going to different facilities, and a large portion of them are going up to Porterville Developmental Center. Fortunately, one of our vendors, our contractors, has agreed to allow the contract to go up with them, which I'm really pleased about.
A highly publicized Ventura County grand jury investigation in 1976 led to more reform at the hospital. During staff testimony, problems in patient care, including the administering of drugs and staffing, were highlighted. Although 8 indictments against hospital employees were returned in early 1977, they were dismissed later that year. Procedures were tightened in the administration of medication to patients, and better records were kept. A special investigator was added to the staff, who investigated all deaths and all reports of employee misconduct thereafter. The improvements led to better care throughout the state. In 1983, activity centers, an innovative approach to the training and treatment provision, were initiated at the facility. The activity centers provided day treatment out of the living units and included participation in therapy groups, activity groups, and educational programs. The activity centers supported Camarillo's mission to promote consumer participation, responsibility, performance, and productivity. 1986 marked the center's 50th anniversary. It had grown from a mental institution to serving 2 populations with evolving treatment programs and day activities.
There's been a lot of stimulation here because of our being a teaching hospital, being tightly connected to UCLA.
Since this facility's initial accreditation in 1973, we graduated 49 separate classes of psychiatric technician students through this facility.
Okay, something else that's very gratifying to me is seeing employees that have come in as high school students, maybe entry-level college students, or people who've been working in other departments here, and the gains that they have made. We've had people come in here and during the course of their employment get their teaching credentials, become registered nurses, people going on for their PhDs in psychology. We've had folks who've gone on to medical school to get their degrees. So the impact this facility has becomes even greater because they're now in the local public schools doing education, special education classes. Their expertise has spread far and wide.
When I first started, I changed jobs almost every 2 years. And so it just gave me a ton of opportunities to learn new things, work with different people, different populations out here. So it was just always a challenge. It was always fun. And you just met some of the nicest people in the world.
I enjoy working with my coworkers because, if we have problems, let's solve it together. We solve it by ourselves, and then we come up to conclusion. And then sometimes, if we are down, so we go outside, we meet each other for lunch, and, we kid each other, we try to, we try to uplift our spirits, and then come to work happy.
A neighbor of mine, upon graduation, brought me an application to come to work, and I was certain I didn't want to work here, and that was in 1963, and been here ever since.
When I came out here, I only had a 9th grade education, and I was the hospital worker, and I got a lot of encouragement from from a lot of people that you could do better.
You think you're coming to learn how to take care of these people, and you really learn so much about yourself when you go through all these different psychology classes and stuff.
The vision for the facility, enhancing independence through innovation, was actively put into practice throughout the programs and departments by dedicated staff who provided care, training, and treatment for individuals with developmental and mental disabilities.
The administration here, especially in Central Nursing Services, is what made this hospital, I think, so very special because they really listened to the nursing staff on the units, the level of care people. They included level of care in all committees for devising care plan standards, for charting systems as instructors for the charting systems. Level of care was extremely involved in any changes that went on here at the hospital, and so the changes that were made were especially beneficial to the patients and patient care.
By 1992, Camarillo served a population of 586 persons with developmental disabilities and 571 persons with mental disorders.
I have very fond memories of many of the patients that have been here and the progress that they've made. To get a letter from them every once in a while over the years, we got letters from patients that have left, and they write back or they'll call and tell us how they're doing. And to know that we've had a part in that success in their lives has been very gratifying.
Camarillo, I believe, is one of the most progressive and innovative hospitals with treatment that I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of. We've come up with a lot of new and innovative treatments and methods of obtaining our ultimate goal, which is to get the consumer back into or the resident back into the mainstream and functioning well.
The role of the facility had changed dramatically since it opened its doors in 1936. It evolved from a locked institution for the severely mentally ill to a facility that provided innovative training and treatment modalities to help stabilize individuals with developmental and mental disabilities and return them to their communities as soon as possible. The staff and innovations from Camarillo continue to enhance the developmental and mental health service systems in California today. In March 1996, due to declining resident population statewide, the Departments of Developmental Services and Mental Health submitted a plan to close Camarillo State Hospital and Developmental Center to the legislature. The closure plan was approved by the legislature, and the state began planning for the care of the residents. In 1996, state developmental centers were serving 4,795 persons with developmental disabilities, down from 13,355 persons in 1968. Camarillo was recommended for closure, as was the Stockton Developmental Center, by DDS and DMH in their Strategic Plan on the Future of Developmental Centers and Strategic Plan on the Future of State Hospitals, approved by the legislature in February 1996. During the closure period, DDS and DMH held regular meetings with those who would be affected by this closure, including constituents, parents, and employees.
I don't really think of this as a closure as such, a definite change in direction for the people who work here and the clients or consumers that we have served. And in that change of direction, I probably see it changing to the point where society is pointing us and making us go, and that's to the smaller, more personable type of care facility.
Camarillo residents were placed in the community and at other state-operated developmental centers, with most of the developmentally disabled population going to Porterville and to Fairview Developmental Centers.
They show a lot of interest. They've come up here. Program director, specifically from Metropolitan State, came up with 2 psychologists and presented a slideshow of the grounds and the buildings and the units that the residents will be housed in when they get down there. So that helps ease that fear in the kids. And in preparation, we've been doing a lot of group therapy with them and just openly talking with them about the upcoming move on a regular basis, and here lately down to weekly, to kind of ease them and their fears about this a new move, a new place to live.
We are truly caregivers, and I think the majority of us have been concerned about our clients, especially the ones that aren't going with us. We want to make sure that they transition well and that they get the same care and treatment that we give them. And I think so far we've been really successful.
And we also had individual transfer conferences where their parents, their social workers from outside, anybody that had any involvement with them were invited, and they were invited.
We have a good teamwork, that we cannot sense the work is hard because, on our free time, we kid each other. We have a nice time, really, most of them. But then, right now, we're kind of lonely because we're moving. But, we're moving to Metro. But all of us are going, but some are not because of some, maybe families are far away. And some goes to another facility, so we don't know.
There's 3 major challenges. The first is to assure that our consumers end up in the most appropriate placement, whether that be in another developmental center or state hospital, to ensure that we've worked with those other facilities so that they fully understand what the needs of the individual consumers are, that we've really done our job and provided with them with all the information they need to continue with quality care. The second is our interface with the parents of those individuals. In many cases, it's tougher on the parents than it is on the consumer to make the move. We've been working real closely with both parents groups and then with individual parents that we've developed a rapport with over the years. And it's very traumatic. It's very tough on these people. They're individuals that have moved here 5 or 10 years ago, and they're now in their 70s. Their loved one is being moved to a facility, 90 miles away. It's going to be very tough on them. So we're working with other facilities to make that transition as easy as possible, but it's not going to be easy for them. And then the final major issue we have going is staff placement. And we've done just a ton of work in setting up the job center, having job fairs, You know, a lot of town hall meetings, a lot of individual meetings with staff.
We've had over the past 4 years close to 400 people leave Camarillo to these new settings, and they're doing well in these new situations. Many of them just needed the option to try a different situation. Many of them needed the expertise, the funding that was made available by DDS to allow them to take the next step and to do the transition. And many folks that people thought wouldn't ever leave the developmental center are now living successfully in the community.
The world and the rest of the state have learned from us. We've had a lot of educational programs, and we're world renowned, and I don't think that's going to go away. And my heart will always be here. I didn't think it would happen, but it is, and it's time to move on. And I just hope that whatever happens out here, if it goes into a university or something, that we maintain the beautiful scene. It's just a lovely place to be at. I'm just going to miss it.
It's one of the most beautiful places in Ventura County, as far as I'm concerned, is the state hospital grounds. But it's time to move on, I guess.
Like I stated to my children, you do not go into a profession for the money. You have to like what you're doing. I loved it here. I grew a lot. I amounted more than I thought I ever dreamed of. And it's all because of the people that I work with, the kind, caring people that were not only kind and caring to our patients, but to each other.
This has been a special place for consumers. It's a wonderful location, and I'm hopeful that the treatment innovations and treatment services that people have received here can be duplicated at other centers, so it can continue, and ultimately people can live in the best therapeutic environment, the least restrictive therapeutic environment that meets their specific needs.
When I came here, I said I came here to stay, and I've been here ever since. Yes, I was. I wasn't going to leave here. In fact, they have time getting rid of me now. Like I said, I came here with the first load of lumber, and I'm going to leave with the last load.
On June 26, 1996, the Secretary of State and Consumer Services Agency Joanne C. Cosberg announced the formation of a community-based task force to advise Governor Pete Wilson and the legislature on reuse opportunities for the future use of the center. A year later, on June 30th, 1997, Camarillo officially closed its doors, the last residents transferred to other institutions. Ultimately, the recommendation was to create a new state university, California State University, Channel Islands. The legislature and the California State University Board of Regents later approved this recommendation, and CSU Channel Islands opened its doors in 1998. This decision ended a 30-year local effort to bring a 4-year university to the Ventura Camarillo area. With the end of one era, another begins.
In the 61 years that Camarillo State Hospital and Developmental Center was open, it served tens of thousands of Californians with severe needs. The thing that set Camarillo apart, though, were the people who worked here. These were individuals who were highly trained, motivated, and absolutely dedicated to the people they served.